to the Campus Martius, which contained the Sipta Julia, where my family had its auction house. On the other hand, being Domitian, he might well decide to come in secretly to listen to what people were saying about him in case it was treasonous, so he could take revenge. He would not camp out any longer than he had to. He was famously impatient. He would be nagging the planners to move faster. He would also want to keep close personal track of all the arrangements. Our podgy overlord liked to control every detail. He hand-picked army officers and was prone to dismissing freedmen suddenly from the palace secretariats simply because, in his view, they had been around too long to be trusted. He took everything to heart. Any fault in the ceremonial would be seen as a deliberate insult to him. Any omission or failure would be fatal. My husband, who was a magistrate that year, had been involved for weeks in preparations. Like so many in Rome, he was now depressed and anxious. He regularly came home moaning it was all a nightmare. Pressure on the official organisers probably caused what happened one evening on the Capitol. It began with a man falling to his death off the Tarpeian Rock. It looked like suicide. Unfortunately for those who tried to hush things up, an old woman saw him drop. With no idea of tact, she kept insisting loudly that someone had been up there with him. She made this claim to everyone she met in the street, her neighbours, their visiting relatives, barmen, stall-holders, the teacher at the infant school at the corner of her road, and some feral cats she fed. A busybody took her to the Vigilies to report what she had seen. That might not have mattered, since the Vigilies know all about discretion, which avoids having to write reports for their prefect, but she found other outlets. Because of the triumph, Praetorian guards were crawling everywhere for security. So when the daft crone spotted one making himself unpleasant in a bar where she sometimes had a tipple, she rushed up and parked herself there to regale him with her tale. The guards don't bother with discretion. Any word longer than 2 syllables sounds intellectual to them, and intellectuals are bad people. The big idiot would have listened to her anyway, wondering if this was a plot. Praetorian cohorts are taught that it is their noble role to deal with anything that could be embarrassing to their emperor. The one whose tunic sleeve had been grabbed by the witness's skinny fingers went back to camp, muttering. Some loon on the commissariat thought, "Ho, dealing with stuff is what we lads do, so let us bravely deal with this." But a crazy old lady, who actually admitted her eyesight wasn't brilliant, was too hard to interrogate. They soon passed on the story to a civilian committee. In a superstitious city, such an unnatural death could be seen as an omen, a bad one. In any case, if some heartbroken soul found his life too much to bear and jumped to oblivion, Domitian would be furious that a sad man with mental troubles had spoiled his day. He might even feel that having mental troubles was his own prerogative. Either way, he was unable to punish the victim, who had so selfishly put himself out of reach by dying, but he would lash out. Somebody would cop it. The first committee shunted the problem onto another. Every group connected with the triumph looked for a way out, which they hoped someone else would process. Time passed, as usual in bureaucracy, but this difficult agenda item would not go away. The scene of crime, if it ever was a crime, was their big problem. The Tarpeian Rock is an execution place, starting in mythical history with a get-rich-quick wench called Tarpeia, who tried to betray Rome to a besieging army for a reward. Instead, she was crushed under a heap of shields and thrown off the arcs, the citadel. At the heart of Rome, this outcrop of rock is somewhat prominent. Not only is it an important part of the Capitol, but the Capitol is where a triumph traditionally ends. Sacrifices to Jupiter and other rites occur up there as the honoured general formally completes his task, hands back the symbols of his military power, and sighs with relief that he can now go home for supper. Nobody wanted Capitol.